One thing about Louis T. Wigfall is that he was the first commanding officer of the brigade. He was made general, and it's a good thing. He never really led his men in battle because he liked his whiskey.
Louis Trezavant Wigfall was born on April 21st, 1816, to Levi Wigfall, who'd been a successful merchant in Charleston, South Carolina before moving to his Edgefield plantation, and Eliza Thompson Wigfall, who was from one of South Carolina's oldest families, the French Huguenot Trezavant family. From a young age, Wigfall was taught the importance of honor, courage, and the defense of one's reputation. The dueling code, the Code Duello, a strict set of rules governing the conduct of duels, was a critical part of his education. It was a world where a man's word was his bond, and disputes were often settled at the point of a pistol. Young Louis attended the Rice Creek Academy, a military school for elite aristocrats, before entering the University of Virginia. In 1836, he entered South Carolina College, now the University of South Carolina, and developed an interest in law, but spent most of his time in the local taverns. In the 1830s, as conflicts with the Seminole tribe in Florida escalated, Wigfall saw an opportunity to test his mettle. He dropped out of school and joined the fight, participating in the Second Seminole War, earning him the rank of Lieutenant of Volunteers. This early exposure to combat and the harsh realities of war would profoundly influence his later military and political career. He returned to South Carolina College and graduated in 1837 and was admitted to the bar around 1839. He returned to Edgefield, joining his brother's law practice. He'd squandered his meager inheritance with his drinking and gambling, and soon found that the practice of law was not as exciting nor as profitable as he'd once thought. Wigfall found the rough-and-tumble political arena more to his liking, and during a heated campaign in 1840, Whitfield Brooks, the father of Preston Brooks, a future congressman who would gain his claim to fame by caning the abolitionist Massachusetts Senator Charles Sumner on the Senate floor, wrote a series of articles that Wigfall took issue with and challenged the elder Brooks to a duel. Being 65 years old, Whitfield declined, but Wigfall was not satisfied. So he dueled the younger Preston Brooks. Both were wounded by shots to their thighs, but survived. This initial foray into politics and the Brooks affair destroyed his law practice. He was elected delegate to the South Carolina Democratic Convention in 1844, but his violent temperament and behind-the-scenes meddling had already doomed his youthful political ambitions. He piled up medical bills because of a sickly infant son who eventually died, and the local sheriff finally sold the Edgefield estate to satisfy his debts. In 1848, Wigfall and his wife, the former Charlotte Cross, and 3 children moved to Galveston, Texas, before relocating to Nacogdoches, where Louis set up a law practice with Thomas Jennings and the future Texas representative and Confederate Colonel William B. Ochiltree. It wasn't long and Wigfall opened his own practice in Marshall and once again became active in politics, alerting Texans to the dangers of abolition and the growing influence of non-slave states in the United States Congress. He quickly established himself as one of the community's most ardent and vocal fire-eaters, a name given to Southerners who supported radical means to defend slavery and states' rights. But his advocacy is met by United States Senator Sam Houston, the hero of the Texas Republic and a leading member of the Democrats who favored moderation and compromise. Wigfall served in the Texas House of Representatives from 1849 to 1850, and in the Texas Senate from 1847 to 1860. He played a major role in organizing Texas Democrats and fighting the American Know-Nothing Party in 1855 and 6. The 1857 governor's race brings now Senator Wigfall head-on against Sam Houston. He throws his support behind hardened Richard Runnels, a states' rights man and a secessionist like himself. When Runnels scores a surprising win, much of the credit goes to Wigfall, whose skills as a stump speaker are said to rival Houston's. In 1859, Wigfall was selected by the legislature to represent Texas in the United States Senate, filling the vacancy caused by the death of James Pinckney Henderson. And he served from December the 5th, 1859 until March the 23rd, 1861. In 1860, Wigfall and the Fire Eaters were instrumental in fracturing the Democratic Party, hoping to kill any possibility of compromise between the North and the South. That split led to the Democrats nominating two men for president, Stephen A. Douglas for the North and John C. Breckinridge for the South, and guaranteeing the election of Abraham Lincoln as president. The Confederacy is formally organized on February the 8th, 1861, and with President Jefferson Davis' support, even before his exit from the United States Senate, Wigfall became a member of the Provisional Congress and an aide to General P.G.T. Beauregard, commander of the Confederate troops at Charleston. His presence there leads to an overtly showboating move for public attention. After a 2-day bombardment of Fort Sumter has worn down the Union defenders, Wigfall commandeers a small rowboat, arrives at the fort using his handkerchief as a white flag tied to his sword, and offers surrender terms to the astonished Union Colonel Robert Anderson. While his act infuriates Beauregard, the public deems Wigfall an overnight hero. As the war actually breaks out, Davis appoints him colonel of the 1st Texas Infantry on August 28, 1861, when the first 12 companies of recruits start showing up in Richmond. And when the rest of the Texans arrive in the fall, what would become the 4th and 5th Texas Infantry regiments, Wigfall is promoted to brigadier general and given command of the Texas Brigade on December the 13th. During the winter of 1861-1862, the Texas Brigade would guard the artillery along the south side of the Potomac River, and Wigfall would make his headquarters at a tavern in Dumfries, Virginia.
One thing about Louis T. Wigfall is that he was the first commanding officer of the brigade. He was made general, and it's a good thing. He never really led his men in battle because he liked his whiskey, and he was drunk a lot of the times. And when he always thought that there was a Union attack against the Texas Brigade, so they would fall into battle formation, and there was nothing going on. And so when he was elected to the Confederate Congress, it really saved the Texas Brigade from being led into slaughter.
In February 1862, Wigfall turned the command of the Texas Brigade over to John Bell Hood, who commanded the 4th Texas, in order to take his seat as the new senator from Texas in the Confederate Congress. The remainder of the war years were devoted to his role as a Texas senator, where he was regarded as a ferocious supporter of the military. But Wigfall's best efforts in Congress are more than offset by his campaign to undermine Jefferson Davis. The two began as friends in 1861, but petty rivalries between their wives caused an early strain, followed by heated disagreements over battlefield strategies and field commanders. When Richmond fell in 1865, Wigfall fled Virginia. He first went home to Texas for almost a year, and in the spring of 1866 he moved to England and spent 6 years in self-imposed exile. He practiced law in England, but returned to the United States in 1872, first residing in Baltimore, Maryland. Louis Trezavant Wigfall returned to Texas, landing in Galveston in January 1874. He intended to revive his long-dormant law practice, but he died unexpectedly on February the 18th, 1874, and was buried at the Trinity Episcopal Cemetery in Galveston.